Welcome to Excel Skills for Business Intermediate Course 1. As businesses grow in size, you will find yourself handling more and more complex workbooks, and working with multiple files from different sources becomes standard practice. Ongoing changes in your business mean that you need to extract and summarize data from multiple sheets and workbooks. There are a number of powerful options in Excel that allow us to automate workflows across several spreadsheets. Excel can link workbooks and perform calculations across multiple sheets. Even in quite complex spreadsheets, Excel can consolidate values by position or by reference. The office supply company PushPin has recently gone through a restructure, and Uma has just started as the new manager of the Human Resources Department. She is used to leading big teams, but now she is a bit daunted as she discovers that her new role requires her to do a lot of hands-on work with the HR spreadsheets. As part of her new role, she will have to summarize data and produce reports from multiple workbooks. While Uma is confident with performing calculations across several worksheets, she also needs some efficiency tools to help her streamline these calculations and link the workbooks together to keep her work nice and simple. This week, Uma and you will learn the following skills and techniques: working with multiple worksheets, using 3D formulas for calculations across several sheets, linking multiple workbooks, and finally, consolidating values by position and by reference. Work through this week's practice videos and quizzes. After that, dive straight into the practice challenge to apply your new skills in a different context. Don't forget to carefully study the toolbox, and last but not least, don't forget the ninja tips. Now, let's sit down with Nicky and work through this week's challenge in depth. Welcome to week 1. Welcome, Nicky.
Hi, Prashan.
So, what are we going to get started with for this week?
Well, we're going to start off really nice and gently by looking at working with multiple worksheets. You'll find in your place of work that a lot of your workbooks will have more than one sheet. So it's important that we can create those and manage them effectively. Also, we're going to look at labeling those sheets, which makes them easier to identify. But more importantly, when we start doing our calculations across sheets, it's important that you actually have named them correctly.
You mentioned calculations across sheets, which we covered in the Essentials course, which is a great tool to have. Another way to perform calculations across sheets is using 3D formulas. Could you prime our learners about this, please?
Absolutely. So 3D formulas, really intriguing name and actually a great tool.
Yep.
Probably the best way to explain is to compare it to a 2D formula.
Yep.
So when we're working in a single sheet, if we want to add 3 cells that are next to each other, we don't go this plus this plus this. We say equals sum, and we add them all up.
Exactly.
Now imagine that we wanted to add the same cell from 3 different worksheets. Again, we don't want to say equals this plus this plus this. What we'd like to do is say equals sum and simply drill down. And that's what we're going to do. So imagine you've got your 3 sheets stacked on top of each other. What a 3D formula allows us to do is actually drill straight through.
Exactly. Not just multiple sheets, but in a workplace, we'll be working with multiple workbooks. Could you let our learners know how we do that, please?
Now that's a really good question, and it's actually one of the most common questions to come out of businesses. How do I get data and add it up from multiple workbooks? And there are several different options. We're going to start by looking at linking workbooks. What this is when you create a formula that basically refers to a cell in a different workbook. You do it exactly the same way as you would link worksheets. And it works really well if your workbooks are all located in the same place and don't move around too much. If any of the linked workbooks update, your calculation immediately picks up that change.
You mentioned the issue about moving things around, and this has happened to me a few times, where I've got all my workbooks sitting in one folder at work, and I take one of the files home and the links break. Or I send one of those files to a client and they get an error message. How can we help with this, please?
Okay, I'm so pleased you asked. In the first instance where you've taken the workbook home, you will get a message popping up saying, do you want to update links? Don't worry about it. Just ignore it.
Okay.
You can change the workbook, take it back to work the following day, put it back where you found it, and those links will automatically re-establish. So that's not really such a problem. But the second issue, where you're sending it to a client, that is a problem. He's got no way of updating those links, and you don't really want to send a linked workbook out of your organization.
True.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is look at a different tool. It's Excel's Consolidate tool, and it's fantastic when you have multiple workbooks or even worksheets that are pretty similar and you want to aggregate that data. And it could be added up, but you could also average it or count it. And the Consolidate tool will do that for us.
And like you mentioned, that would assume that the workbooks have a similar structure. Can Excel help us when the workbooks have different structures?
Yes, now there are actually two variations of the Consolidate tool. The one is Consolidate by position, which needs them to be identical. But there's a variation called Consolidate by category, also known as Consolidate by reference, and that allows them to be similar but slightly different. And what it does is, instead of using the position to add the data, it uses the labels, which are the row and or column headings, and where they match, it sums the data. So really powerful alternative, and you can do things with that you couldn't do with linking workbooks.
Sounds great, Nikki. Now we have some great practice videos for you. We'll start with multiple worksheets, then 3D formulas, and then multiple workbooks. And then we'll look at consolidating by position, as well as consolidating by category, also known as consolidating by reference. Work alongside the practice videos by downloading the Excel file and working with Nikki step by step yourself. Then take a break, recharge, and come back and practice them again, because practice makes permanent. We've also got a great practice challenge for you, where we'll show you slightly different ways for you to work through these Excel functionalities and master them. Check out this week's toolbox, as well as this week's great ninja tip. And now it's over to you.
Many of the workbooks we encounter in business contain more than one worksheet. And this is the situation Uma has. She now has to work with the Q3 expenses. Let's look at some of the tools that will help us work with multiple worksheets. All the tools we're going to look at can be found in the sales group on the ribbon, but these are quite cumbersome to get to, so we usually use the tools located closer to the sheet tabs. The first thing Uma needs to do is to add another sheet to put her summary expenses in. We're going to come to the plus, just to the right of the worksheet tabs, and click on it. And a new blank worksheet has been added. You will notice it automatically adds it to the right of the sheet I had previously selected. So it's gone to the right of sheet 1. Unfortunately, this is not where I want it. The good news is you can easily move your worksheets around. To do this, click and hold on the worksheet tab and drag to where you want it. Notice, however, there are two icons, a little white sheet and a black arrow. If I drop the white sheet now, it will actually put the sheet after sheet 2. The icon to look for is the black arrow. When that gets to the right position, release your mouse, and the sheet is moved. The problem is, starting with a blank sheet is going to be quite a lot of work. Uma has realized that basically her summary will look very similar to the staff expense sheets. It'll be quicker for her to make a copy of one of those. One way to make a copy is to right-click on one of the sheets, and it brings up a menu for working with worksheets. 4 down is Move or Copy. We're going to click on that, and you'll see from here you could move it or make a copy. You can choose to move or copy to a different workbook altogether. We're going to stay with this workbook and then choose where you would like the new copy to go. We would like it to go at the end, and importantly, make sure you tick Create a Copy. Now click OK, and there's an identical copy of sheet 1 at the end. You can also use the drag option to copy. The only difference is you have to hold your control key down. So I'm going to come to sheet 1 again, hold my control key down and drag it to the very end, release, and there's another copy. I now have way too many worksheets, so I'm going to need to delete a few of them. To delete a worksheet, again you can right click and press delete, and it's removed. Now when I come to delete this one, you'll notice it has data on it, it's not empty. And I get a warning message. This is really important. You cannot undo a sheet delete. So if a message pops up, please check it, make sure you are happy to delete it, and only then press the delete button. Notice my undo arrow is grayed out. No undo. But that's fine, I now have the sheets I want, I just have no idea what's on which. So the next thing I'm going to do is label my sheet tabs. You can use the right click, but even quicker, just double click the label, and without clicking in again, so with it still highlighted, type the name you want. This is Sean's sheet. Sheet 2 is for Uma, and then Carlos. And finally, this is my summary, so this is going to be HR Q3. And when you're done, you can just click away or press enter. Another visual clue you can give people is color coding the sheets. To do this, right-click on the tab, come to Tab Color, and choose the color you'd like to add. I won't do them all, I'll just do a couple so you can see what it looks like. So there's Carlos, and we'll do one more. Great. Now you'll notice when I'm clicked on the sheet, it doesn't go fully pink, it goes white with a hint of. When I click away, I get that full color. So the sheet that is predominantly white is the one you currently have selected. Uma now has to make another change. She's decided that this heading that appears on each of the sheets is not very descriptive. She, however, would prefer not to make the change 4 times. So quite a powerful little option we have is to group sheets. This means selecting multiple sheets simultaneously. I'm going to click on Sean, hold my Shift key down and click on HRQ3, and you'll notice they've all gone white. Now any change I make to one sheet will occur to all. So I'm going to come up to my heading and replace it with something more meaningful. To unselect the sheets, click away from the original tab, and you will now notice that the heading has changed in all 3. So really powerful, but be careful that you don't make changes with your sheets accidentally grouped, or you might not like the results. Finally, while my staff are actually entering their expenses, I don't want them to accidentally change my summary sheet. So I'm going to hide that away. And you may have many reasons to want to hide things. Maybe it's extraneous data. Maybe you just would prefer people didn't see it. Simply right-click, come to Hide, and click. The sheet has not been removed, it's just hidden. And to get it back, all we need to do is right-click on any of the sheet tabs, say Unhide, select the ones you want to unhide, and OK. We've now looked at several tools for managing our worksheets, from deleting to inserting, copying, moving, and even renaming. Make sure you have a practice with all of these, and then move on to the next video, which will show us how to create calculations across multiple worksheets. Where you have workbooks with multiple worksheets, it is quite likely you will sometimes have to create calculations that use values on other sheets. Uma has exactly that situation where she needs to sum up the staff expenses from their individual sheets into the sheet HRQ3. In this video, we're going to look at a very efficient way of doing this called 3D formulas. Let's start by looking at the conventional way we would do it. So we would click in the cell where we want our answer to go. So my total miles driven for all staff members for July. I'm going to type in equals, come to Sean, and click on his miles. I'm then going to type a plus, click on Uma's worksheet, and click on her miles. Then another plus, come to Carlos, click on his miles, and then very important, don't try to click back into Q3, just press enter. And there's the total. So that worked fine, but imagine I had 25 workbooks. This would take a very long time and be very error prone. If I was working in a single worksheet, so call that 2 dimensions, over here, I would not come and create a formula that said F7 plus F8 plus F9 plus F10. would I? Absolutely not. I would use a sum function, which says basically add up all these cells that are next to each other. Well, imagine that our worksheets are layered on top of each other. If we were to try and drill down through a cell, that would be, well, a third dimension really. And the great thing is you can use sum functions in 3 dimensions as well as 2. To summarize, what I want to do is sum all the cells C7 from Sean through to Carlos. Let's look at how we do this. So I'm going to delete this so you can see I'm not cheating, and I'm going to type in equals. I'm then going to type my sum and open my bracket. So far, very normal. I then come to Sean's sheet and I click on his miles. Here's where it gets different. I want to select all the sheets from Sean to Carlos. So like we did grouping our worksheets in the previous video, I'm going to hold my shift down and click on the Carlos sheet. They've all gone white. And if you have a look at my formula, it's saying add up sheet Sean to Carlos, cell C7. So all the C7s from Sean to Carlos. Click enter, and we've got the same answer. So that has worked perfectly, but it was much quicker and much less likely to error. We also have relative references still working, so we don't have to do that over again. I can use my fill handle to copy that across, and if I double click, that will copy all 3 down. Let's have a look at how to do that one more time. So I'm going to do it for lodging and meals this time. I'm going to click into C17 and type equals. My sum function and open my brackets. Come to Sean, click on his lodgings, hold my shift key down, click on Carlos and press enter. And once again, use my fill handle to copy that across and double click to copy down. Really nice and quick. And for the miscellaneous, because it's the same structure as these cells, I can simply copy Control-C and paste Control-V. And there's my Q3 expenses sheet completed. As you can see, 3D formulas are really efficient. There are 2 things to be aware of, however. If I were to move these worksheets around, so have a quick look at my public transport. Uma uses public transport and we can see it costs $125 a month. If I were to move the Uma worksheet to be after Carlos, because I'm summing everything from Sean to Carlos, Uma's values are no longer being included. So one thing to be aware of is you don't really want to be moving your sheets around too much if there are 3D formulas being used. Let's quickly put that back. And another limitation you've probably identified is that the structure of the workbooks you're adding up must be identical. So they're not without their limitations, but at the same time, you can see that 3D formulas is a very efficient tool for summing values across multiple worksheets where the structure is the same. Have a go at it yourself. In the previous video, we saw how we could work across multiple sheets within a workbook. In collaborative environments, however, it often is required that we work with data in multiple workbooks. And Excel allows us to do this through linking workbooks. We have exactly this example here, where Uma needs to collect the data from the Q1, Q2 and Q3 workbooks and summarize those values into her total expenses. Now before we begin the video, please make sure you've opened up W1 linking workbooks and that you've closed any other workbooks you may still have open. Now we're going to be working with 4 workbooks and we want to see them all on the screen at the same time. And you're going to find that the ribbon starts taking up a lot of space. So to save on space, we're going to minimize our ribbon by double-clicking on the Home tab. Now let's go get those other workbooks open. So I'm going to press Ctrl-O. I'm going to come to Browse, navigate to where your workbooks are stored, and then can you please select Expenses Q1, hold your Shift key down, select Q3 so they're all selected, and click Open. Now all 4 workbooks have been opened, but it would be much easier if I can see them all on the screen simultaneously. To do this, we can use the Arrange All function. This is available on the View tab, but there's a great little feature I'd like to show you called Tell Me What You Want to Do. It's quite new, and if you click in here and start typing what you want to do, Excel will actually give you a short list of things that meet your criteria. And yeah, Arrange All. So I'm going to click on that. I do want them to be tiled, and I'm going to say OK. And they are all 4 of my workbooks laid out nice and easy for me to use. Now what I want to do here is get the total values from each of these workbooks into this workbook. I do not want to type them though, partly because I'm very likely to make an error and it's going to be very slow, but also because if the values should change in one of these workbooks, I need this one to update automatically. So we're going to use exactly the same technique we used when working across worksheets, and you'll see it works almost exactly the same with one small exception. So start by clicking in C7 and type equals. Now I'm going to come to my Q1 workbook, click once to select the workbook, and then click on the field you want to pull through. Now just have a quick look at this formula. It's got first the name of the workbook, then the name of the worksheet, and then the cell. But it's done something different. It's applied an absolute cell reference. And this happens automatically when working across workbooks. Now we're going to copy this formula in a moment, so we want to get rid of that. So to do that, just press your F4 button 3 times. Absolute cell reference gone. Now to get to the next cell, I'm going to press Tab. And let's repeat that process. So equals, come to HR Expenses 2, click in that total field, F4 3 times to get rid of our dollars, and Tab. And the last one now, we're going to get our Q3 total. And of course, turn off our dollars and enter. Now what we've done there is we've pulled through the values from the workbooks, but we've also linked our expenses workbook to our 3 quarterly workbooks. And what that means is if a value changes in one of them, it will update here as well. Let's test that theory. So let's say, for example, in Q1, Carlos actually did 400 Ks in January. So I'm going to come to his miles driven. I'm going to change that to 400, press enter, and note that when I do, the miles driven here automatically updates. And if I were to undo that change, we're back to where we started. And the good news is relative cell references still works. So if I come into here, select my top 3 calculations and drag them down using my fill handle, the values are pulled through. One small problem, I've lost my formatting, so let's just come to here and say fill without formatting. Great, so that worked beautifully. I'm just going to make this workbook maximized again so you can actually see what's going on. Right, let's just finish this off quickly. So I'm going to copy these bottom 4 calculations, Control C this time, Control V, and Control V. And you can see I've very quickly completed my total expenses for Sydney. Now linking is obviously very beneficial when you have workbooks that are stored in a similar location and aren't likely to move around too much. The problem is once those workbooks start moving or being renamed, the links can get damaged. So the next thing I need to show you is where you can go to manage these links. So I'm going to come to my Data tab, and just underneath the Data tab you'll see Edit Links. This is normally grayed out, but here we have links, so when we click on it, we can now see our 3 linked workbooks. If one of these links becomes damaged, we just click Change Source, and it will let us go and correct it to where the workbook actually is located or what it's called. I'm going to click Cancel because it's fine. The other option we have is to break a link. I strongly recommend you don't do this unless you're absolutely certain you need to, because once you've broken the link, it is a permanent move. You can't simply undo that process. But let's see what happens when we break the link to our Q1 workbook. So I'm going to click Break Link. There's my warning. I'm going to go ahead anyway. And when I close the dialog and come back into my workbook, you'll see when I go to any of the cells, the formula has been replaced by the last known value. So I've completely lost that link, and the only way to get it back is to repeat the process we did earlier. Take a moment to consider if there are any situations in your workplace that could be solved by using linked workbooks. In the last video, we saw how we could work with data in different workbooks by linking those workbooks. Linking, however, can cause problems of its own. And Uma has a situation now where she wants to take the regional expenses from 3 different regions and sum them in a single workbook that she can send to head office. She wants to avoid the complication of working with links. A tool that can be really useful to her is the Consolidate tool. It can be found on the Data tab of the ribbon, in the Data Tools group, and you'll see the Consolidate tool. Now, before we get started, as we did last time, I suggest minimize your ribbon, and then let's get our other 3 workbooks open. So Control-O, click Browse, and the 3 workbooks we needed are the expenses for Melbourne, Perth, and Sydney. So use Control to select them, and then click Open. Once again, all 4 workbooks have opened, but it's easy if we can see them. So I'm going to come to my View tab this time and click Arrange All, and then OK. And there are my 4 workbooks ready to go. Now, when we want to do a Consolidate, the first and possibly most important step is to make sure you're clicked in the cell where you want the consolidation to begin. A common mistake is to accidentally click in one of these workbooks and you risk overwriting your data. Now we're going to find our Consolidate tool. So I'm going to come up to Data, come to Data Tools, and there's our Consolidate. Trickier to find, but still there. This is the Consolidate dialog. The first thing you're allowed to do is choose which function you want to use. So you don't have to sum the data. You could get a count or an average or any list function really. We're going to stick with sum. And now we need to tell Excel where to get this data from. And that's what we put in this reference box. So click in the reference box. We'll start with Perth. So I'm going to come to the Perth workbook and I'm going to select everything from C7 all the way down to F28. Now, next important thing, make sure you click the Add button after adding each reference, otherwise you'll end up overwriting them. So that was Perth. Let's do Melbourne. So same thing, come to your Melbourne workbook, select everything from C7 down to F28, and click Add. And then finally, we'll do Sydney as well. So everything from C7 down to F28, and click Add. We have now told Excel to add up the values from those 3 workbooks and place them into this one. So now we just press OK. And there is all of the data from those 3 workbooks added together into our new workbook. This is, however, a snapshot. If I click on one of the cells, you'll see no formula, simply the value at the time that the consolidation was run. What this means is if I come back to Perth and change my miles driven for Q1 to 1,741, this does not update. That said, once you've set up the consolidation, it actually remembers it and you can simply rerun it any time you need to. So I'm going to click back into C7, come to my data, come to Data Tools, click Consolidate, check everything's okay, and now it has picked up the changes. So once you've set up the Consolidate, you can run it as many times as you need to, and you don't need to have the worry of links. That said, if you want links, you can add them. So I'm just going to make this a little bigger so you can see what's happening. And I'm going to duplicate this worksheet because Uma actually doesn't want links. So this is just for demonstration. I'm going to hold my Control key down and drag the worksheet tab to get a copy. And then I'm just going to delete the data out. Now we're going to run exactly the same consolidation again. So Data, Data Tools, Consolidate. But this time I'm going to have a look at this little checkbox at the bottom called Create Links to Data Source. And I'm going to put a tick in that and say OK. Now at first glance, it looks like an identical consolidation. But have a look to the left and you'll notice gaps in the row numbers and these funny little pluses. What has happened is Excel has actually created an outline, and if I click on one of these pluses to expand it, you'll see it's actually pulled through each individual parking toll from each of the workbooks and then summed them up. So while the links is quite powerful, it is also a little bit messy, and you should be warned up front, you cannot undo a consolidation with links. So now if I needed to get rid of this outline, it's going to be a bit of a manual job. Quick heads up, select all the cells affected, come to your Data tab, come to Outline, come to Ungroup, and then Clear Outline. That will get rid of the outline for you, but then you'll still have to manually go and remove those extra rows that have been added. So just think carefully about whether this is what you want before you go about adding it. You will have noticed that the workbooks had to be identical in structure, and that is because we have used a Consolidate by position. In the next video, we're going to look at an even more powerful Consolidate option called Consolidate by reference, which allows our workbooks to be slightly different. It is now Q4, and Uma has been asked to summarize the leave days from the 3 regions into a single workbook. Once again, she's decided to use the Consolidate tool, but this time there's a bit of a problem. Let's open the workbooks and see what the issue is. So again, can you please make sure you've minimized your ribbon, press Ctrl O, click Browse, and the 3 workbooks we need are the leave days Melbourne, Perth and Sydney. So I'm going to select those and click Open. Now again, we'd like to see them all at the same time, so I'm going to come to View, Arrange All and press Enter. Now having a look at our Sydney, Melbourne and Perth workbooks, you will notice that they actually have different numbers of departments, and not only that, but they're listed in different orders. This makes a Consolidate by position impossible. Fortunately, there is a variation called Consolidate by reference. The way this works is it actually matches the data in either a column or a row and summarizes on that basis. And that's exactly what Uma needs. So let's see how it works. I'm going to click in the cell where the consolidation should begin, come up to my Data tab, Data Tools, and Consolidate. It's the same dialog we saw before, and we go through much the same process. Choose your function, we want a sum, and then add your references. This time, however, a slight change. I'm actually going to include the labels on the left. So I've selected B5 all the way up to G10 and then click Add. I'm then going to come to Sydney and do much the same. Select B5 to G11 and add, and finally Perth, B5 all the way up to G9 and click Add. Now if I just press OK, it's going to do a Consolidate by position, which won't work. So I'm going to come to the Use Labels In checkboxes over here, and you'll see it gives us the option to use the labels in the top row and or the left column. Now we want to use the labels in the left column, so I'm going to tick that and say OK. And there's our consolidation. Brilliant. Let's just double check our numbers. So accounting, for example, 23 plus 6 is 29, plus 2 is 31. Fantastic. And as we saw with the previous example, you can actually use different functions. So let's try do an average. I'm going to scroll down for a moment and click into B15. Once again, I'm going to come to my Data tab, Data Tools, Consolidate, and this time instead of sum, I'm going to choose average. It has, remember, all of my other settings, including to use the left column, and I just say OK. and there are my average leave days taken for each department. So an incredibly powerful tool for summarizing data from separate workbooks that need not be totally identical. We have now looked at 3 ways of working with data from different workbooks: linking, consolidate by position, and consolidate by reference. Your challenge moving forward is to make sure you choose the right option to match your business case.
Congratulations! You have taken your first steps towards becoming a more advanced user of Excel. Working across multiple sheets and workbooks adds a new layer of complexity. Constructing 3D formulas and consolidating values across multiple sheets, who would have thought? Working alongside Nicky in the practice videos is one thing, but it's a different ballgame altogether once you venture out on your own. This is when you really get to put your Excel skills to the test. So open up the practice challenge for this week and have a go at it. You will surprise yourself by how far you have come already. The practice videos are there to reinforce what we cover in the videos, so make sure you work through all of them. Don't go past the toolbox. It is full of resources for your study, handy keyboard shortcuts, terminology and concepts, and last but not least, you need to keep an eye out for our great ninja tips. The entire team and I are super excited to have you join us on this Excel journey. There are thousands of learners like you in this course. You are definitely not alone. When you have a question, if you get stuck anywhere, jump onto the discussion board. Here you get to connect with learners from all around the world. There is quite literally a world of opportunity right at your fingertips.